We can now consider the configuration objects. When we convert a production environment to SaaS, we need to export the entirety of the configuration objects. This means jobs, workflows, calendars, events, and so on, but also the settings variables specific to the clients. You'll face two types of situations. First, the initial imports, where everything gets imported. Later, you may have to import individual objects. For this reason, we have two methods. They each come with certain advantages, but also limitations. The first is the transport case. It relies mainly on database utility type procedures executed on the CLI to import and export. Export uses db-unload and import db-load, both executed on the command line. This is particularly convenient for your initial transfer of objects from on-premises to SaaS because it's well suited for large-scale exports of complete configurations. It swiftly captures everything indiscriminately in the clients and outputs to a file. Configuration objects like jobs across all folders, but also settings variables. Since db-load needs to execute on the CLI, which you cannot access in SaaS, both the sending of the data files but also the import itself need to be handled via service requests. This is true for version 24 and 24.1. However, looking to the future, version 24.2 will allow users to upload transport case files without a service request using either AWI or the REST API. If you're currently using version 24.2, you should have this capability natively in your AWI instance. You should also note something very important. Autonomous export and imports to and from client 0 is simply impossible, since some objects are not accessible. For example, an export-import of client 0 could overwrite UC system settings, which could have disastrous impacts on your instance. As a result, any process of importing into client 0 will need to be handled by Broadcom via service requests. The second option is the export and import via XML files. This is better suited for small exports directed at specific categories, say all jobs inside a folder. You download the file via AWI and then import in SaaS yourself via AWI, Java API, or REST API. No service request is required. We start with the transport case. This is a standalone feature to import-export that extracts from and imports to the database directly. You can also perform partial export and import via AWI, which imposes limitations on file size. As a result, we recommend another feature via XML for partial exports, and we won't cover this aspect of the transport case. The transport case is well suited for mass batch exports and complete configurations. A TC export essentially takes absolutely everything in the clients, and it draws directly from the database via the utilities, db-unload for export, and load for import. The result is a flat file, which you can upload to SaaS via service requests, which will also be needed for the import since the execution of db-load in SaaS is simply impossible. This is a limitation which is being addressed in version 24.2 when TC files can be uploaded by customers without a service request. We've provided the syntax. In the utility directory, execute uc bdb-un-b for batch, transport all to transport everything, -c with a 4-character client, and -x with the path of the output file. The db-load procedure is similar. We execute uc bdb-ld, the client and the file. db-load is a simple procedure that imports from a file, and so it requires options regarding the transport case. Note that this procedure preserves folder structures. The import procedure executes an authentic replication of your clients. Before using db-unload, we recommend updating the ini file and setting the no archive check setting to 1 to enable it. Not doing so could prevent the utility from executing if it's unable to detect the presence of an archive flag, which you may or may not have. For this demo, we're going to show how to use the transport case to export from one client and import into another. Obviously, these aren't SaaS since we're not able to execute commands there, but we're going to show the procedure that you should run to export and then what the service team will run in the SaaS world for the import. On one side of the screen, we have two client connections and dedicated tabs. The first client has a complete configuration. The second is a brand new client, and so it's empty. Let's look for the db-unload configuration file so that we can verify the no archive check setting. We execute the command. This unloads all data from client 100 directly from the database and exports to a file. This is from the on-premises instance, and so you'll be able to do it yourself. We execute the second command. The DB loads the data from the same file into client 300, presumably on the SaaS platform. The service team will need to do this for you. Everything has been recreated, including your variables. We can see that the folder structure has been recreated as well. All the objects stored in the jobs folder are found here. The other method for exporting and importing objects is the XML-based approach. The objects are imported and exported into and from an XML file. This offers certain advantages, but also a number of drawbacks. On the plus side, this is an AWI interactive function, meaning you have access in all clients. It's a simple right-click. Both exports and imports can be performed in AWI, Java API, or REST, but it's limited in that you can't perform comprehensive configuration exports. You can only run the XML export for a single folder structure. Even so, inside the exported folder, all subfolder structures are recreated. We're back in our two-client configuration. This time we export the workflow folder to an XML file and then import it in the other clients. All objects inside the folder have been imported. Note that, irrespective of the method you use, user input is required. You'll need to reactivate your schedule objects, and period objects won't be imported. You'll need to recreate those.